Nigel Farage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure the Prime Minister and the whole House would wish to congratulate Donald Trump on his landslide victory last week.
Hold on. I will hear the question. Nigel.
Thank you. But within a couple of days we'd learned of a third assassination attempt. Charges have been laid, and behind it are Iran's Revolutionary Guards. Has the time not come, Prime Minister, to prescribe what is so obviously a terrorist organisation, and in doing so, not just do the right thing, but maybe mend some fences between this government and the incoming presidency of Donald Trump's?
Keir Starmer decided to aim at Nigel Farage and his Reform UK party, but he probably didn't expect to stir up quite so much heat.
Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK and the new MP for Clacton. Nigel, how are you?
Very well indeed, Jeremy. Thank you.
Good to have you on. God, there's so much I want to... God alive, there's so much I want to talk to you about, man. So this man that's now our Prime Minister, who came to power because of the sheer incompetence of the Tory party to do anything that they said they were going to do. I've long thought, Nigel, that he had absolutely no plan, because I think that when it gets as bad as it was, you win an election by telling the British people who are disillusioned, this is what's wrong with your life, and that's who to blame. There's never been a plan. We had one plan about the boats, which is really interesting. He said that he was going to get a new border chief commander. It's taken 12 weeks to find Martin Hewitt, who was the policeman who locked us all up if we disobeyed his rules during COVID. On day one, Martin Hewitt has spoken to the Times and said that actually, although Starmer, who employed him, said it's about smashing the gangs,
the Labour leader has been vocal about his concerns over Farage's opposition to a crucial employment rights bill in the UK, accusing Reform UK of undermining workers' protections. But here's the thing. Starmer's attacks might be less about policy and more about fear, with Farage's influence growing, especially after the success of Brexit.
No.
Were you not impressed with Mike Amesbury?
Not at all.
So who would you vote for if there was another by-election?
The Farage people.
From Reform UK?
Of course.
What do you like about them?
Different from Labour and Conservative.
I only ever have and ever will vote for Labour. No matter who they are, whether they're good or bad, indifference. Labour.
You always vote for Labour?
Always.
Who are you voting for if there's a by-election here in a few weeks?
Reform it'll be, yeah.
Reform?
100%, yeah.
How come? Aren't they...
They're quite lukewarm, though, to be honest with you. I want something...
you want stronger?
Stronger, slightly, not too much, you know what I mean?
Would you vote in a by-election if there was one in a few weeks?
Yeah.
Who for?
Mike.
Mike?
Yeah.
What if he's not standing? Labour again?
Well, yeah.
Even though he smacked someone?
He was defending his family.
OK.
Reform.
You'd vote Reform. How come?
I'd vote Reform because fed up with all the others.
The sun is shining on us.
Good today.
Starmer is caught in a tricky position, and many now believe he's worried about the rise of Reform UK, a party that's quickly gaining traction as more people become disillusioned with the main political parties.
Just to follow up on that, if British troops are in Ukraine keeping the peace and get attacked by Russia, will you come to their aid?
If the British people are in Ukraine and they get attacked,
if British soldiers in Ukraine.
you know, I've always found about the British, they don't need much help. They can take care of themselves very well.
That sounds like
you know what? No, it sounds like it's evasive, but it's not evasive. You know, the British have been incredible soldiers, incredible military, and they can take care of themselves. But if they need help, I'll always be with the British, okay? I'll always be with them. But they don't need help. You look at their career. You have done very well over the years, haven't you?
We have. I'm very proud of our country. And but we've also always been there backing each other up between our two countries. That is why this is the greatest alliance for prosperity and security I think the world has ever seen. Whenever necessary, we've absolutely backed each other up, and that's at the core.
Could you take on Russia by yourselves?
Well...
Trump's response to all this? He wasn't having it. The US president immediately called out Starmer for what he saw as a desperate attempt to push back against Farage's rising popularity. Trump pointed out that Farage and he go way back, with both men sharing similar views on issues like immigration and national sovereignty. Trump also couldn't help but notice that Starmer seemed to be trying to squash Farage out of fear that Reform UK's growing presence might just end up challenging the Labour Party's hold on power.
I got to say, 4 years ago, I was honoured to come to America to bring the Brexit message, the message that you can beat the establishment. And that is what Donald Trump did. He beat the pollsters, he beat the media, he beat all the predictions. And here's the worst bit, they've never forgiven him for it. They've never, ever forgiven him. They have spent 4 years trying to delegitimise him. 4 years of the Russia hoax. 4 years of a false impeachment. Most human beings under that barrage would have given up. This is the single most resilient and bravest person I have ever met in my life.
It's interesting because what's playing out in the UK with Farage is not so different from what we've seen in the US under Trump. Both are outsiders who have pushed against the traditional political order, appealing to people who feel left behind by the establishment.
The leader of the UK Reform Party, who, by the way, did really well in that last election. I've been his friend for a long time, and I wasn't sure, am I supposed to be his friend or not? But it never mattered to me if he did well or not. I always liked him, but it's easier to like him when he got the kind of votes he got. He really took it by storm, and they say he's going to do even better this time. Nigel Farage. Where is Nigel? Thank you, Nigel. Thank you. What a great guy.
So when Trump steps in to defend Farage, it's more than just a political endorsement. It's a statement that Starmer and others like him are facing a new political force they don't know how to handle. And in a way, it's just getting started. Trump has always made it clear that he shares a deep and lasting friendship with Nigel Farage. This bond isn't just about mutual respect, it's about a shared vision for how the world should work.
Nigel Farage is a friend of mine. Boris is a friend of mine. They're two very good guys, very interesting people. Nigel's had a big victory. He's picked up 32% of the vote, starting from nothing. And I think they're big powers over there. I think they've done a good job. Well, I like them. I mean, they're friends of mine, but I haven't thought about supporting them. Maybe it's not my business to support people, but I have a lot of respect for both of those men.
Both men came into the political spotlight as outsiders, challenging the traditional political order in their respective countries. For Trump, defending Farage isn't just about sticking up for a friend, but about standing by someone who shares his hardline views on immigration, nationalism, and skepticism towards international institutions like the European Union and the United Nations.
As Keir Starmer just walked into the White House, what do you think he can expect? Well, I have to say Starmer appeared to be in quite good form at the dispatch box yesterday. He told a very good joke at the British Embassy party last night, so I think he's going in with a bit of confidence. You know, the discussions around Ukraine, well, it's all going to be about security guarantees. Obviously, Trump's going to say, well, we're going to have massive investments in Ukraine, and we're going to want to protect those investments, but
Farage's stance on immigration is a mirror image of Trump's own. Both leaders advocate for tighter borders and a more cautious approach to immigration. They believe that national security should come first and that a country's sovereignty should never be sacrificed for global cooperation. It's not just about policies, they're both driven by a deep sense of nationalism, placing their country's interests above all else. This shared ideology is what makes their alliance so strong. For Trump, Farage's rise is a reflection of the same anti-generalist pro-sovereignty sentiment that fueled his political career. Trump, Farage and other prominent figures like J.D. Vance, who's made waves in US politics, are all aligned in warning against the dangers of overreaching government control. Vice President Vance, in particular, has voiced concerns about the UK's potential drift toward restricting free speech and stifling national identity, much like the US saw with some of its own progressive policies.
Than this administration.
Well, I heard his speech. You're talking about JD's speech, right?
Yes, sir.
I heard his speech, and he talked about freedom of speech, and I think it's true in Europe. They're losing their wonderful right of freedom of speech. I see it. I mean, I thought he made a very good speech.
The shared message is clear. Stand firm on national identity, free speech and immigration policies, or risk losing them to globalist pressures. Farage, Trump and Vance are a growing alliance pushing back against what they see as an increasing threat to national sovereignty and freedoms. And this is just the beginning.
As far as we're concerned, this may be the last ever American president with a deep emotional attachment to these islands. And so, yes, he of course is talking about tariffs, which is one example of something that could happen that could really hurt us. It's all avoidable. It's all avoidable. You know, well, I think Starmer has to think about two things very hard. Firstly, does he want us to be tied ever closer to a failing Europe or tied to a booming America? And secondly, I think the one thing Keir Starmer needs to really think about is this. We're the biggest foreign investor in America. They're the biggest foreign investor here. Trade is important. Our cultural ties are deeper today than they ever have been at any point in history.
Farage's views on immigration are clear. He wants a tough, controlled approach that prioritises the UK's national security. His policy mirrors Trump's stance in many ways because both leaders believe that unchecked immigration puts too much strain on public services and threatens the country's identity. For Farage, it's not just about the numbers, it's about ensuring that the UK remains a place where its culture and way of life are protected. This hardline approach appeals to those who feel that immigration has gone unchecked and that their country's resources are being stretched thin.
What of this 1.2 million say? Is the idea that they're not given amnesty and they decide eventually to leave on their own volition?
You cannot give them amnesty. You cannot give them amnesty. To do that is an insult to those who want to come legally and pay their money and get passports and swear oaths.
So we don't do anything about them? We just let them
I
leave?
didn't suggest that for a moment. So you cannot give them an amnesty, and yes, we must be deporting people who come illegally, especially those who committed crimes.
However, Farage's critics call it restrictive, but many of his supporters, which are rapidly growing by the day, see it as reclaiming control and sovereignty of their country. Now, Keir Starmer is caught in the middle of this growing debate. He's trying to hold on to Labour's traditional working class base while also navigating the rise of populist movements, especially with figures like Farage making waves. Starmer's strategy is a balancing act. On one hand, he defends Labour's progressive policies on workers' rights, but on the other, he has to address the rising tide of anti-establishment sentiment that Farage's Reform UK party is tapping into in recent months. Labour can't ignore Farage's appeal, especially as more voters feel left behind by the political elite. Nonetheless, if Starmer goes too far in criticising Farage, he risks losing touch with the growing group of voters who are attracted to Reform UK's vision. Also, while Starmer has no issue attacking Farage, he knows he can't afford to alienate Trump or his supporters. The UK's relationship with the US post-Brexit is crucial, and Starmer's political strategy is clear. Criticise Farage, but don't go too far and risk damaging Labour's international standing. It's a careful political calculation, but Starmer knows that playing both sides is key to keeping Labour relevant. But the growing alliance between Donald Trump, Nigel Farage and other right-wing populists is more than just a partnership. It's a sign of a wider shift in global politics. Populism is gaining ground not only in the United States, but in the UK and beyond. A look at the recent presidential elections in Germany confirms this theory, as the far-right AfDP party narrowly lost the election by 9%, finishing with 20% of the votes, but overtook the long-time political powerhouse Socialist Democratic Party, which had only 16% of the votes. There is no doubt populists are challenging long-established political systems. The rise of figures like Trump and Farage signals that more and more voters are rejecting the status quo and turning to voices that promise to put their country and its people first.
Do you believe that European leaders have a fundamentally different view of the world than this administration's?
Well, I heard his speech, and you're talking about JD's speech, right?
Yes, sir.
I heard his speech, and he talked about freedom of speech, and I think it's true in Europe. They're losing their wonderful right of freedom of speech. I see it. I mean, I thought he made a very good speech, actually, a very brilliant speech. Yeah. Europe has to be careful. And he talked about immigration. And Europe has a big immigration problem. Just take a look at what's happened with crime. Take a look at what's happening in various parts of Europe. I thought his speech was very well received, actually. I've heard very good remarks.
Whether it's Trump's America First mantra or Farage's push for UK independence from the EU's influence, these leaders have tapped into a deep sense of dissatisfaction with global elites, and it's spreading like wildfire. Overall, Starmer's leadership is at a crossroads, and he must carefully balance Labour's traditional values with the changing political currents. The next steps could determine whether Labour can survive the rise of populism, or if it will continue to be overtaken by figures like Farage and Trump. The uncertainty of Starmer's position is clearer than ever. If you enjoy this political discussion, like this video and subscribe to the channel for more fascinating political content.